Welcome back, everybody, to episode 7. We got Nick Shedd on the Brandon Golden Show, Director of Strength and Conditioning for the Boston Red Sox. We're going to talk about several things of his career, how important sleep is, what does that actually mean, how do you set a routine, and then what players can expect from developing from the youth aspect of things all the way up to the big leagues. Nick Shedd, who's the Director of Performance and Strength and Conditioning with the Boston Red Sox. Welcome, my man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad after we spoke together at the Wake Forest conference, we get to actually connect and have a little more conversation.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It was awesome being at the Wake thing. I've been able to be there several times now. I got to speak on my own, and I was telling some of the folks that work with me here at the lab, I was more nervous on that panel than I was presenting on my own a couple of years ago, and I think it was partly just because of who you, Chris, and I've known Steve for a long time, but being up there with you guys, like it was a little more intimidating than I thought it would be, and it was an awesome opportunity to be able to interact with you and then get you on the show, man. So let's just kind of jump in a little bit. Tell us a little bit about like your career, like where it started in strength and conditioning, and how it got you to where you're at.
Yeah, so I have to go back to my undergrad. I went to Averett University, and the guys that started the FMS were two of my core professors. And like nobody uses that term, but Averett, the population was like 2,500 people. So you have the same professors for a lot of courses. And my degree was in sports medicine, but Lee Burton and Gray Cook were two professors that I had for the majority of my core classes. So that was sort of my introduction to human movement. At the time, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but at the time, it was just the FMS was like exploding into professional and college sports. So that was like the cutting edge cool thing, and I like really bought into that and caught my interest. And I was a D3 athlete, so I was really good at football all the way through my youth when everybody was matched up by weight class. And then when I got to high school, I was like the last one to hit puberty. And so I went from like the best to nowhere near the best very quickly, and immediately took to the weight room, D3 grinder, and spent forever trying to make myself elite. Come to find out genetics actually matter. So yeah, that was my undergrad, and then I went to App State for grad school, and my specialty was exercise science, concentration, and strength and conditioning. And then from there, did a postgraduate internship. Is actually through Exos, or under the purview of Exos, but with U.S. Army Special Operations Command. Following that, didn't have a full-time job, so I moved in with my parents in Aiken, South Carolina, and they had USC Aiken, it's a D2 school, and they're kind of a feeder back and forth with South Carolina. So I wanted a weight room to work out in. I didn't have income, so I volunteered to be the strength coach for their baseball team if I could work out there, and did that for about 6 months. Then I went into the private sector, did that for about 3 years. And I really wanted to get back into team sport. I missed game day. I missed the competition, and I think most people, not everybody, but most people that work in the private sector understand you got to do what it takes to keep the lights on. So it's not all training athletes. That's really what I wanted to do. So I joined the women's national field hockey team. Did one Olympic cycle with them. That was from 2017 through 2019. Unfortunately, we missed qualifying for the Olympics. And then COVID hit, and I started a doctoral program. I was supposed to move to New Zealand, but because of COVID, borders were shut down. So I did that remotely for about 2 years. Then I joined the Houston Astros as the head of strength and conditioning, spent 3 years there, and then came over to the Red Sox and just finished up my second year.
Yeah, man, that's awesome, and I'm glad you took us through kind of every stop, because there's a lot of folks that are super interested in coaching college or professional, and I have interns that come in here all the time, and I kind of did it a little bit differently. I was a college strength coach for about 10 years and worked in the Dodgers organization for about a year and a half, and really being able to do that, and then getting out of that to do this now. There's so many folks that come in there. Well, I want to do what you did, and I want to. I want to work at East Carolina, and I want to work with the Dodgers, and I want to work at Mississippi State as an intern and do all this stuff. And I'm like, but do you like the things that I had to do early on? Like I was, interning at High Point University, getting there 5 o'clock in the morning, working till 1, and then working a full time job so I could pay my bills as I lived with my parents. And not that that's the badge of honor, but like it takes what it takes, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like it takes what it takes to be able to have the opportunity to be in the position that you're in and to have the career that I was able to have, in the team side as well. What would you say, like how has your thought processes and how has like your things changed and evolved since your time with those guys? That let's make sure we go over the FMS stuff. Like for the folks that don't know what FMS is, that's really, in my opinion, in my career, like that's one of the first assessments that kind of came out that was like, we need to understand what we're doing. There needs to be a systemized process of how are we looking at athletes? How are we training athletes? How are we looking at the skill side? How are we looking at the coordination side? Even when that stuff wasn't mentioned quite yet. But how did that lay the foundation for probably where you're at today?
It's kind of been a cyclical thing for me, and I feel like things in strength and conditioning, we tend to be stubborn, hard headed people. So it evolved. Like initially, everything for me was movement, and if you couldn't get a 3 on your overhead squat, we're not loading that pattern, right? And um, then when I started working with Gen Pop alongside athletes, I quickly realized that most of your Gen Pop people are not going to perform well on that test. And most of your athletes are going to perform well enough to where nothing is really a concern. And also sometimes when you load people, they get into better positions.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still using it, but it was not on a real strict capacity. And then when I moved into team sports, it was, I'm not a believer you can just watch somebody do anything and pick up exactly how they move. But it was very time consuming, and I struggled with not being able to draw any correlation between that and on field performance.
Yeah.
Then some studies came out saying this doesn't actually prevent injuries because we understand that there's a lot more that goes into it. Specifically, the FMS doesn't address anything force related.
Right.
So then everybody started like hating FMS, but actually the FMS guys never claimed that this prevented injuries. It was just a risk factor for injuries, and it was meant to be a blunt instrument. So I kind of got all the way away from it and then started going back in that direction. But then especially once I joined baseball, our operation is so huge. Bringing guys in spring training, we did this my first year in Houston. They had been doing it for a while, but you bring guys in, you get 180 athletes in the building, and now we bring them in waves. But at the time, it was like 2 waves. You got your major league guys are showing up, and then everybody else is showing up. And to run that many guys through an FMS and then actually follow through with prescription was really hard to do. And then when you try to scale that, you're like handing guys a piece of paper. Oh, okay, you're a hamstring guy, like go do this. Well, now there's no attention to detail. They're not actually benefiting off of that. And then because it was so time consuming, you don't do it very frequently. So then you don't even know, are you measuring transient changes when you do this 3 times a year? You're measuring changes because of the workout you did yesterday versus are these actual real adaptations that you've created? So for me, if I can't draw any kind of correlation to performance, it's not helping our benchmarking in terms of scouting or acquiring players. And I can't definitively say that this is we're affecting change here. I'm not going to do it. So there was a point where I got all the way away from movement screens again. And then I went in a different direction. In Houston, I built out a table testing curriculum for our strength coaches. And, that's something that we're not taught in school typically. And we're often encouraged not to even try, like just refer out. You get sideways looks as a strength coach, put somebody on a table.
Yep.
But I think that's one of the great separators is actually understanding human movement biomechanics and actually how to diagnose things in real time. So when those transient changes come up throughout the course of a season, you can take a guy, put him on the floor, look at hip ERIR and go, okay, you're off today. Let's give you something in this moment to fix this, get you back on track and go. So we went in that direction, and that sort of evolved here with the Red Sox as well. But our movement screen is meant to be quick, fast, and also give us some level of pattern recognition where we're looking at more more whole body movements rather than isolated stuff. It's like a tiered system. We have postural photos and videos, and then the next layer, if we need it, is some table testing after that.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, and I couldn't agree more. There's a couple of things that you said in there, like being able to just see things in real time. Everything in this game happens so fast that our brains and we just can't see it. We can't process it that fast. So being able to use the slow motion video, the edgers, like all that stuff, the qual assist, whatever it is, the motion capture stuff has been really invaluable for me. Like we use Uplift here at the facility, and it's been great. Whenever I consult with Wake, they obviously have whatever piece of technology they need in there, and I'm sure most pro organizations, and I know the Dodgers did as well. But being able to your point, the one point that I want to really hammer here that you mentioned about the assessments is like a quick assessment, and if it's necessary. So like being able to look at the posture stuff, like having when I was at East Carolina, I'd have the guys take their shirt off, arms overhead, abduction, abduction, and look at just the way the scapula's moving. How's the posture? Where does the scapula sit on the thorax? And it's like, okay, well, if we need to dive deeper into that, then let's go dive deeper into that. If we need to dive deeper into way a high school player moves here, like let's do that. Let's not just waste our time doing things, because the most important thing is training and evaluating and developing and getting them better. And you can do that within the training session. It doesn't always need to be an hour and a half assessment process. So I think that's really cool that you look at that similar that way as well.
What's your cutoff? If I could ask, what's your cutoff where you're saying we got to do something about this?
Yeah, I think if I see something that's concerning, that I'm like, oh crap, that could be an injury waiting to happen. Like I don't want this player, regardless if it's we got a guy that's getting ready to go to big league camp here soon, or it's a sophomore in high school. It's like if what they're doing and their skill set demands something where it's going to potentially be an issue, like let's try to address that on the front end and be proactive instead of reactive whenever something happens. Like, if we got the scapula and it's sitting way off the side of the, off the thorax, like that's a big issue. Probably need to train the low trap and understand how the upward rotation is happening, and they're having anterior shoulder pain. Like, cool. Probably need to work on that and dive a little bit deeper there. But I guess long-winded way to answer your question, like if it looks messed up and I'm worried about an injury, or if I'm looking at that and like there's going to be some type of performance issue at some point in time. So injury or performance risk, in my opinion, then we're going to dive a little bit deeper in it.
Yeah, I agree with you, and to me, it's if there's anything lingering, obviously any kind of pathology that's lingering, if there's a skill change that makes sense for us to try to address in some sort of movement capacity mindset, or if there's anything that looks like extremely aberrant, definitely get after that. But our challenge is everybody in the pro team setting, they want everything objectified. And it's hard to work across all of our domains if things are not objectified, but that comes with its limitations too. So, yeah, it's a imperfect world for sure.
It really is. And when you look at it, I mean, to your point about having 180 dudes rolling in, and being a minor league strength coach and sitting out in Arizona and having these guys roll in, and we're in cages doing our testing that was part FMS, part SFMA, like, the conglomerate that those guys with the Dodgers higher up, like made for us performance coaches to go execute. Like you're talking about a lot of stuff going on. You're talking about long days. Like you're talking about, we would sit there, we're working on torso, and it's like, is it greater than 45, below 45, or equal? And you got a high prospect walk in, and you've been out there for 4 hours straight, and you're like, hey, Nick, is that 45 or is that greater? And it's like, man, that looks greater. Cool, sick. Let's keep it rolling. And to your point, like, is that objective or is that subjective? It's meant to be objective, but it's two coaches who are probably dehydrated looking at it, saying what they think and keeping it rolling. But yeah, I think that's to that point, Nick. I think that's where the art of coaching, that's where our experience, that's where our, I guess, thought processes and just our ability to connect with the player and kind of see what's going on. That to me is just as important when I'm looking at coaches or when I'm looking at evaluating players and people that I want to collaborate with, as it is that their ability to understand how to utilize force plates and all these, objective things. I think the objectivity is great, but there's so much subjectivity and there's so much chaos that's built into sport that we have to have the ability to ebb and flow and, again, set our players up and ourselves up for success and whatever that may look like.
Yeah, what we've resorted to is when we do our postural photos and videos, the coach that's working with that player will make notes in Smartabase and our AMS and one of the notes is basically clear or not clear. And all that means is, are we giving some sort of intervention to address something, or are we just leaving this alone for now?
Yeah.
And then it's basically just typed out notes of what they see and what they're planning to do with the player. If they go to that second level where they're actually doing table testing, that is only for that coach only. And that's not going to follow the athlete if they go from one level to the next because of the inter-rater reliability issues. Our sports team, they'll do that. Like they have very strict protocols on how they measure stuff, and they'll even tell you they have inter-rater reliability issues. But we're not going to measure hip range of motion a different way than sports med, and both log those as objective measures as the guy goes through the system. So a lot of it is we just try to keep our coaches informed on what we see, what we're trying to accomplish. And when they move up from one level to the next, that next coach has a starting point, but they essentially are repeating this screen. They're repeating everything on their own so that they can see it with their own eyes and make decisions.
Yeah, because that's how you inform players. That's how you give those coaches the autonomy, and you empower them to go do their job. It's not like you get a report from the guy that was below you and says, hey, like say you're in the big leagues, I'm in AAA. Hey, Nick, this is what I got on X, Y, and Z player. Like, go get him. You're like, sounds good, man. I'm going to see him in a couple of days. I'll do it when he gets here. Like that to me, I love that, because I think that makes sense, and it takes a lot of the bias out, and it takes a lot of the just the ability to not relook at the player and just to take somebody's word and go from there. I think that's outstanding. I'm not sure that happens at a lot of professional organizations. So kudos to you for making that happen and keeping it simple. That's another simple way of the game's already complex enough. The season, everything people have to deal with in professional baseball is always complex enough. So keeping it simple, man, is super cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about the thoracic rotation, even the FMS guys will tell you that you should have the same person grade the same tests over and over again. We don't have that opportunity. So
right, of course you should, but like that again, like that's not real life. And when you have 185 guys roll in, and then you got the big league guys, and it's like, okay, maybe today the AAA guy is going to go over with the big league guy so he can get used to being in a big league camp, and maybe we want him to be in the big leagues next year. Like there's so many different things that go on. Like, yeah, in a perfect world, that's how you would do it. But the only perfect world is a research laboratory like that, and even that doesn't. And how many research studies have you read where it's like, hey, well, more research needs to be done, and these were some of the limiting factors X, Y, and Z, and it's like, right, of course, there is no perfect world. So I think that's outstanding that you guys just do it your own, and then you have conversation. Like if you need to have a conversation with maybe the AA guy, like cool, you have that, and the coordinators do, and continue to roll from there. That's outstanding, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about your PhD a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about like what went into your PhD, and then how that, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you went from PhD and then you were doing some things, and then you went to straight. Was your first experience in pro ball in the big leagues as the director?
Yeah. So kind of it's a little bit of a messy story. So I was really interested when I was with the field hockey team. We were definitely overextending the capabilities of technology, but we started using a piezoelectric sensor that went between the mattress and box springs and monitoring sleep on our players every night. And we worked with this company. I don't know if they're still around, but they're based out of Israel. They the device was called Sleep Rate, and the app that we created was called Boost. And we were combining objective sleep data with subjective wellness questionnaire data, and trying to create a readiness metric. And I think eventually the field's going to go in this direction. We wanted that to be an input for training. Right. And it also was really informative for our long haul travel. We would actually adjust our travel based on what we knew over time from that information. So that got me interested in the sleep side. And for a long time, the only real recommendations aside, they're non-pharmaceutical for enhancing athletes' sleep, was basically what's your nutrition look like late at night, and then the caveman effect, right? Dark room, cold room, put your phone down, etc., and spend more time in bed. And the predominating thought was that you can't actually do anything without some sort of drug intervention that's going to affect sleep staging. And that never fully added up to me. And then Sherry Ma out of Stanford started doing some research showing that we know that under sleep restricted conditions, sometimes general fatigue conditions, you can reproduce a one-off max power or max strength output. But she started doing some jump studies showing that while people under super sleep restricted conditions were able to maintain their jump height, their joint coordination variability increased. So basically, their strategy was changing to
Right.
accomplish the same task. And then when you take that over to the baseball side, you think about the speed of movement with your pitchers. Um, they might still be able to produce the same output on a force plate, but when they have to produce a highly coordinated sequence movement at high velocities and the strategy is changing, that's probably going to affect their command or their expression of velo or both.
Yeah.
And so that's where my PhD study was going. And there was one device at the time. It was a Dream headband. There was actually an EEG device that was more ecologically relevant. Like you didn't have to send somebody to their house to hook up a portable polysomnography machine. It's something you could actually monitor brain waves on night over night. And then we're going to take that and look at how that changes relative to our travel schedule, our workloads, and then also towards the end of the studies move into like spin rate and
Yeah.
accuracy, et cetera. And so I started doing that, and the Astros were funding a good portion of that. And then little over 2 years into my research, it was the Auckland University of Technology. They came back and said, by March 31st, you have to move here, or your tuition is going from $5,500 a year to $30,000 a year. They were no longer extending the domestic rates to me because their borders opened back up.
Makes sense.
So I had a kid at the same time, and then my contract was expiring that year with Houston. And I decided I'm just going to put this on pause. I'd love to get back to it at some point, but
Right.
I couldn't move to New Zealand because there's not even baseball there, and my entire research was based around that. And now, if I move teams, I'm losing my funding for this. So
Right.
that's where that ended up. And sorry, I think there's a second part to your question.
No, it's all good. Just like, how did that, I guess, inform, and then you kind of answered the question, but like, how did that get you to like kind of where you are, and as far as like the development side of just being in the big leagues, like how did you go from, I guess, doing what you're doing to being a part of that organization, then being the director of strength and conditioning?
So that was a unique situation, right place, right time, I guess, for me. Full transparency for everybody listening. I had applied during COVID to over 400 jobs, and I'm sure I'm not the first one or the only one. There were so many jobs posted. I don't even think most of them got hired at the time. So
Right.
I saw the Astros job got posted, and I applied to a thing, and there's no way. I've never worked in pro baseball. I have no shot at this. And then every stage that they called me back through the process, I was just floored. Once I got the job, I found out the guy who had the job before me, he's from the UK. And so my boss at the time had developed a mindset that like Europe was doing strength and conditioning better than America. And really, he had just come in and set up a pretty good program.
Yeah.
And he also, the Astros at the time were known for their player development. So it's a little bit, I guess, maybe egotistical, but their mindset was, why would we take somebody else that's inside of baseball if we feel like we're already doing it at a high level? Let's find somebody outside of baseball that could bring something fresh to it.
Right.
And so I fit the mold. With my travels with the field hockey team, I was pretty connected to strength and conditioning in the rest of the world. So it was just a happy marriage at the time, and the sleep stuff was something that they hadn't really gone after yet either. So it was something novel that could have been an add-on.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about for the the collegiate, the high school, even the young minor league guys of like let's unpack that sleep stuff that you were doing in your PhD, because I want to make sure everybody understands that. Like we talked about like how it can affect just the overall joint structures, the strategies that folks are doing. Like I mean, you're talking about spin rate's going to be affected, the shapes are going to be affected, the way you do things, the where like potentially where the joints are and time and space are affected. Like, why is that so important for a high school kid, a college kid, and even a minor league guy trying to break it into the big leagues?
Well, once you get, well, probably even high school too, but especially once you get into minor league baseball, you'll realize that every sleep presentation you've ever sat through is basically not relevant. You have a bunch of people telling you exactly what sleep habits are going to give you perfect sleep, and then your sport sets you up for complete failure, right? Like you're playing
Right.
night games, and then
Yeah.
you're encouraged to hydrate, have a ton of sodium, which can affect REM sleep, and eat a big post game meal, and then somehow fall asleep right away after that.
Yeah.
Your sleep schedule's inconsistent because you play day games, you travel, etc. So trying to find some routine is vital, and understanding that it is a very imperfect world. And I would still go back to, like, if you can try to get 8 to 10 hours a night, regardless of when that is, that's going to be better than less.
Right.
But consistency in your sleep schedule is the most important thing, and your body's going to adjust its sleep cycles. If you wake up and go to bed at the same time every day, it will adjust its sleep cycles, and you're not going to feel tired getting up at that time every day. But you're talking about, with deep sleep, you're talking about physical recovery, muscular regeneration, protein synthesis, etc. And then the REM sleep, which is more of what I was what I was interested in my research. That's where your neurological system, your brain is recovering. You're consolidating your skill acquisition. You don't actually get better during practice. You get better when you recover from that. And especially when you're talking about motor skills, coordination, those things are very, very sensitive. They're very, very transient. And you could be super elite and have one bad night of sleep, and all of a sudden everything's a mess. And pitchers will talk about feel, right? That's the first thing. I can't feel this pitch, or I can't feel like I'm pushing out of my back leg. You mitigate a lot of those problems when you sleep well. And you also, baseball is a highly saturated sport. There's a lot of competition. Average minor league careers 2.5 years.
Yeah.
If you want to continue progressing while you're playing 142 games a year, you have to recover really well so that you can train really hard and then still turn around and perform. And those things have to be a constant cycle. If it's not, then either your training's not going to be as good, or your performance isn't going to be as good, or both. You're never going to maximize it, and you're not going to accelerate your performance at the same rate as everybody else that's out there. And you're just not doing yourself any favors. And I would say last on that, probably the first issue I see is guys will lose command, but then we will see that as a velo loss, because they will immediately adjust to try to get the ball in the zone. And now they're throwing darts and their velo goes down. They're professionals, so they can find a way to get it in the zone. We'll actually, if you look at their biomex stuff, we have skeleton viewers and whatnot. They will wind up at a lot of the exact same positions, no matter what day it is, no matter what pitch they're throwing. But how they get to those positions, the time in between, is what changes.
Yeah. Yep. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal, because if that happens repetitively, again, to your point, like, then maybe they're not in the game for as long as they potentially could be. Thanks for tuning into the Brandon Golden Show. Just wanted to talk briefly about Clean Fuego and our sponsor. So if you're looking for better spin efficiency and really to be able to throw the ball without cutting it and have true spin, check out Clean Fuego at cleanfuego.com. Thanks for tuning in to the Brandon Golden Show. Let's kind of transition more into like what you're doing with Boston now. If you don't mind, just give us like the system of like what strength and conditioning is from the Dominican all the way up to the big leagues, and how you guys process that.
Sure, and I'm curious on the back of this, how this is different in your world.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a lot of similarities, and I actually feel like pro baseball strength and conditioning has followed the rest of the world in strength and conditioning. It's been a little bit behind college. It probably would be college first, then pro, and then high school in terms of the evolution of it all.
Yeah.
But so we sign guys as young as 16 or 17 in the DR, and typically they are, I mean, they produce really high on-field outputs. We got pitchers at 16 that are throwing 98 miles an hour. These guys have often never been in a weight room. They've a lot of times haven't played a whole lot of baseball. They have been trained to hit a ball hard or throw a ball hard, and that's basically it. So even though they might throw hard, we still train them as young guys that are at the beginning stages of puberty and have never been in a weight room. So we have a long-term development model that starts with movement quality and capacity. And it is the first tier of that. It should take a guy 1 to 4, maybe 6 months to graduate out of. But it is all body weight movements. We use TRX, suspension trainers, dumbbells, kettlebells, but no barbell movements yet. And they have to pass we have a 5 exercise criteria that's really just built into their programs. And once they can check 4 out of those 5 boxes, they'll move into a foundational strength program. So that's like 20 single leg squats to a bench, 15 push-ups, but quality is the primary concern.
Right.
Once we feel like we can load them safely, they go into foundational strength. And now we are going to introduce your traditional compound movements, your barbell movements. But it's all submaximal loading. They still have a really low training age. They're still going to adapt and get stronger regardless. And once they're able to hit certain strength thresholds, which we're talking about like 80% of your body weight for 6 reps on a back squat, right? Not 80% of your max.
Yeah.
Then we move them into a development program where it's all about mass and max strength. And then when they meet certain criteria there, they'll go into a specialized program and basically live there the rest of their life. They should pretty much have major league outputs at that time. And now we're just really trying to get them to produce force faster, maximize athleticism, etc. So there's a logical progression in terms of move well first, then get strong, and then move fast. But we also expect that they are going to improve in their KPIs throughout the entire spectrum. And the model works completely independently of what affiliate they're at. Like, I don't care if you're in AAA. If you don't meet certain criteria, you're not moving up to the next level, because you can't go back once you overbake a cake, right? Like you've got to sequentially build those outputs and build the athleticism.
100%, man. 100%.
And I would imagine that's no different in your world, right?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I mean, like, again, like being a college strength coach, like you gotta, whenever I was in college, like you gotta get it rolling. You don't have as much time as people think you do. Like when I was at East Carolina, the guys would get there in July and they'd be there for 4 weeks, and we'd get them rolling and we would do some stuff, get them moving. They would go home for a couple of weeks, get there in the fall. You have them for 2 months, and then fall practice starts, and then they go home for Christmas and New Year's and all that good stuff. And they come back, you got a month and a half, and it's time to play. So you really probably have 3.5, 4 months of uninterrupted time to actually train. So like the microwave effect is real in college, and like the strength side of things, and the bigger, faster, stronger, like that matters, because like there's no other way to do it at certain times. That's one thing that's allowed me to be successful on the consulting side is I'm able to come in and push more of the coordination and the skill side of things that I learned when I was with the Dodgers. And then moving to the Dodgers when I got there, I remember guys doing some higher volume and in the rookie ball level, and I looked at my boss Carl, who's with the Carl, like, Carl, we got to get these guys going. Stronger. He looks at me, he's like, Brandon, they're not going to LA tomorrow, like, relax. And like, I can't, but can't we get them stronger? And he's like, we can, and we're going to. Like, to your point, like, we have a lot more time now, and here it's a blend of both. Like, we have we do a lot of isometric stuff, we do a lot of similar things that you're talking about, like the body weight stuff, some coordination with the water bags at times if a kid wants a little flair, some of the stuff that when they're 11, 12 years old, like. But at the end of the day, the progression is the same that you mentioned. It's, can you accomplish certain things that's going to allow you to build the foundation on top of everything? Because if not, I'm not doing you the service as your performance coach to set you up, again, to play this game as long as possible. Like, our goal is to extend kids' careers here as long as they want to play. If that's from middle school to high school, that's outstanding. It's from high school to college, great. If it's from all the way up to the big leagues, that is the most awesome thing on the planet. But at the end of the day, there's a logical progression, and it's not just, hey, we're going to go do whatever we saw back in the day in Muscle Fitness magazine and just go crank out some barbell stuff because that's what, our parents did or whoever did back in the day. It's like there's a logical progression. Like nobody came here. I told a kid yesterday, we work with A&T's, one of the North Carolina A&T's, one of the schools we work with, and had one of their pitchers in here doing stuff last night, and we were doing some split squats jumps. So we were doing an ISO hold, 10 seconds. We went over, we had VBT, we were going 0.6 to 0.8. Then I had him doing some vertical jumps after that and split squat. And he's like going through it halfway up. He's kind of like, I like stopping, pushing maximal effort. And I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, well, it just doesn't feel great. And I said, hey, buddy, you didn't come to A&T. You didn't come here to play split squat jumper in the weight room. Like, I just need maximal effort. Like, you're a really good pitcher. I just need you to produce maximal effort so you can get the stimulus that we're looking for. And he's like, oh, awesome, cool, Brandon. I said, don't worry how it looks. Like, you're not the most coordinated in the jump. But guess what? People that jump aren't the most coordinated in the throw. So, like, we're just trying to get some of that stimuli that's going to allow you to be a more efficient pitcher. It's like, So it's like, just to your point, keeping it simple and allow the building blocks in the process to do what it does and get the guys where they need to be, or girls, regardless of who we're training. Like, I think it's a very simplistic thing, but it also gets overlooked. Sometimes we have to put a little flair on it because it is a business, and you gotta keep people in the door and stuff like that. To your point earlier, but yeah, I mean the meat and potatoes are the meat and potatoes. You keep it simple and you develop.
Yeah, and you pointed to something that I never think about outside the context of pro ball, but everybody's got a timeline, right? Like, you want to extend your career and keep moving, playing at the next level, you have to accomplish certain things, certain outputs by a certain time frame. And so our model actually changes. Well, the model doesn't change, but where people enter the model changes a little bit based on if they're coming out of college. They're not going to start at the very beginning. Most colleges have good strength programs now. So these guys are going to either start in development programs, or if they're already at elite outputs, we're going to start them in specialized programs. But tying this in with the movement stuff, we have to keep output at our forefront. And it doesn't mean that we skip all of the things that lead to like a safe approach to getting there and a smart approach to getting there. But if you're drafted and you're signed at 24 years old, like, your clock is very, very, very short. It's on the bottom end of the 2.5 years.
You're in trouble. You got to go.
Yeah. So we don't spend all of our time just breathing into balloons and doing repositioning stuff. Like, our mindset is always output first. Now let's work back and be logical about how we do that. But we got to get the output there, or else there's no chance.
Right, 1,000,000%. There's a kid who just started hitting here. He's 17 years old. He's super talented. He goes to a local high school, sophomore. Like, he's got a chance to probably play in the SEC. And I'm like, look, dude, like, you're going to be able to do some things that people aren't your age and in your class. I said, but at the end of the day, like, there's also kids that are 17 years old that are graduating high school and that are getting drafted. So it's like, it just depends on what you want to do. So, like, you graduate at 19. Then you get to school, you're 21, 22, depending on when your birthday is. Like, your clock's a lot different than if you go out of high school. So it's like, if you want to play professional baseball, like, maybe going out of high school is the route for you because your age and your clock is already a little bit further than some of these guys. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is trying to teach people and give them that information at this level and in this context without it seeming salesy. And I think that's one of the reasons I like to do stuff like this, is people can hear it from you, and it's not just from me, and it's not just like, oh, well, Brandon's trying to get me to train or do whatever. It's like, I want what's best for everybody. Again, I want people to extend their careers as long as humanly possible. If they think training with other people is great, by all means, go do whatever you feel like is best for you. But to your point, Nick, like, there's parameters, there's things that have to be checked off in order for a scout to even circle your name and go look at you. So I understand what those things are. You understand what those things are. The game demands what it demands. And again, there's guys that are 21, 22 in the big league. So if you're 24 graduating college, like, buddy, you better be ready to go, and you're going to have to push the limit a little bit. And if something happens, but at least you laid it all on the line and you gave it a chance.
Well, and that's when we're chasing velo on the pitching side, and we're being really aggressive with that. There's always that sort of moral concern about you're obviously increasing risk, right?
Yeah.
But the athletes will always say, like, send it. I want to get to the big leagues. If this is what I got to do, send it. So that alleviates that moral concern. And off topic, but any high schoolers out there, if you get drafted and offered $1 million, take it don't go to college. You can go back to college. That's going to be part of your contract anyways. But the amount of times I've seen people offered 750K to $1 million and they turn it down because they think they're going to go to college and get drafted in a higher spot, and then they get drafted and paid 150,000.
Yeah.
It vastly outweighs the inverse. It's very uncommon for people to actually make more money getting drafted out of college. So take the money.
Yeah, we're lucky enough to have a kid. I think I've talked about it on just about every show we've had so far. But Josh Hammond was a high school kid that was 28th overall to the Royals. Was a pitcher coming up, and I can't remember if it was the absolute last year, but it was probably about a year and a half before the draft, and played shortstop as well. And he's like, "Hey man, we're gonna roll this thing as a shortstop." And I'm like, "Man, I think you're a bona fide, like a solid locked in first rounder as an arm. Like was throwing the ball 95 as a sophomore, could really spin it." The not the perfect game, but the PBR All American as a junior, MVP, like just crushing stuff. And he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna switch up what I'm doing, and I'm gonna do this." And it was just the Corey Muscara, and a lot of people talk about this, and I know you see this every day at the big league level, but like just the belief in himself, and it's like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Like either get on board or get the hell out of the way." Like it was the most unbelievable thing, and we went with it. The kid ran it up to 99 as a senior in high school on the mound, and he's playing shortstop in the Royals organization, and he's in here getting after it on a daily basis. Like it definitely matters. Like if you want to have a chance to play in the big leagues, like again, it depends on what's important to you as a person, your family, all of that stuff. Like I'm not in the business of telling families what to do, but again, from a pure clock standpoint, if you want to have the best chance to play baseball in the big leagues, the earlier you're in that system, the better chances you have getting there. In my opinion, from what I've seen working in professional baseball and talking to folks like you, like unless you're a guy that comes out in the top 10 picks or in the first round, if you're a first rounder coming out of college, like you're probably going to have a chance. You're going to have a chance to get in the big leagues. But the higher you're drafted, the more money you're paid. It's no different than any investment any of us have. The higher the investment, the higher the return, the more money you put into that, the more you're going to protect that investment. And that's what a lot of players are to clubs. Like they're an investment and they're an asset to be able to go win at the highest level or trade for somebody that can help them win at the highest level. So in professional baseball, winning at the major league level matters. And if you can help a team win or trade to go get somebody to win, like you're a valuable asset, period.
Yeah, and when you are that 23, 24-year-old, it's basically what you got right now.
Yes.
When you're a lot younger than that, all people really need to see is that you can handle the world that you're in, and that they need to see continuous progress. And if they see progress, your clock extends, and you'll keep people's attention, even if you could be you can be an FCL player or AZL player, rookie ball player, and be absolutely terrible. But if you're only 18, you'll be back the next year. You'll be okay.
Yep. 100%, man. 100%. Man, this has been awesome. What's maybe one or two more things, pieces of advice that you maybe have for a high school, college kid, and then a young guy coming up in the minor leagues, as far as development, nutrition, sleep, anything that pops in your head?
First thing is the difference in stature between most major league players and most minor league players is it's astounding. Most of your major league players look closer to NFL players than people think. And that says a lot in terms of the outputs required to play at that level. And I think the industry is shifting in this direction in all facets. It's a good thing. But if anybody's that you're working with is telling you that you don't need to worry about that, you just need to worry about the actual skill, your swing or your delivery, you should find somebody else, because it's physics. It's not my opinion. It's you need to generate force and momentum in order to hit balls hard and throw balls hard. Period.
Yeah.
And then I would add on top of that when you get to professional baseball, you'll have a lot of resources around you, but you have to be prepared for every department to tell you almost on a daily basis what you're not good enough at, and to be able to compartmentalize and get better at that. I personally don't think that any 18-year-old is totally cognitively ready. I don't know that anybody's totally ready for that kind of world. Like imagine if somebody looked over your shoulder every single day that you're at work, and at the end of the day was evaluating your performance. That's how it is when you're playing baseball every day. Every day is an evaluation. And I'm not saying that to scare people away, but you have to be prepared to walk into a room. And we do this. We have monthly player plan meetings. You walk in a room, you've got nutrition, strength, medical, if you're a position player, hitting, and defense and base running all in the room. And we're going to go around in a circle and tell you what you need to get better at. And here's your roadmap to getting better at that. And it's relentless, and it has to be relentless. So you really, like you mentioned earlier about your player that's in the Royals organization, you have to strip away anything else that is not moving the boat in the right direction. Get rid of all distractions, because nobody's capacity to handle more stress than what's going to be applied to you nobody has that capacity. So you've got to be prepared for that. You got to create the habits early. If you want to have a long-term career, we require our athletes to show up to the weight room every day, even if they don't have a lift. You have to come in and prep. You've got to establish a routine that you can stick to, and it's going to allow you to. It's not peak performance; it's good performance day after day after day while training to improve. You have to expect that you're going to get better in season, not that you're going to get weaker and regress. And with that expectation comes a lot of meticulous planning. So that's the mindset you got to get yourself into. And the guys that have 10, 15-year big league careers, most of them, they don't have perfect training routines, right? Like some of them don't lift as much as we think would be beneficial for them. Some of them lift more than we think would be beneficial. Some have good diets, some have bad diets, but they all have routines, and they stick to them every single year, every day.
100%, man. It's a pressure cooker. I've watched it in real life. I've watched kids that are super talented. You can pick whatever SEC highly touted college you've seen, and I've watched kids, be in that environment, and it's really challenging. And then there's some people that flourish in it. It's like, cool, I just got to get better, and they keep rolling, and maybe they compartmentalize that, to your point, and they deal with it, with family and friends in a different way. But that's a real thing, Nick, and it happens. It's starting to happen at the college level too. Like it's a real thing to where if you can't handle that, like, you can be the most talented player in the world, but if you can't handle that aspect of it, and the communication and the feedback and the criticism, it's going to be very challenging, even in any world. And that's why I think baseball develops players and develops people that are able to go on after baseball to be successful in business and whatever they choose to be, because of that thought process. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, we just have to get better here. So that's an unbelievable last piece of advice there. I really appreciate you coming on, Nick. Everybody, Nick Shedd, Director of Strength and Conditioning with the Boston Red Sox. Thanks for being on the Brandon Gaulden Show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Of course.